don't be blinded by the 15, 18x multiple.
Don't get enamored by the check, because if you do the math, a lot of time, I mean, what they're really doing, and forget about the growth, right? What all they're really doing is paying you with your own money.
That sounds like an oxymoron.
Right? But they're just paying you with your own money. So in my example, $1 million producer selling 20%, which happens all the time, is getting $1 million, 5x, 4 or 5x, whatever the number is, right? All they're doing is paying you back with your own money for the first 5 years.
Right.
Welcome to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa, brought to you by Elite Consulting Partners. It's the only podcast offering unfiltered guidance and the direct advice for all things concerning financial advisors, RIAs, and the practitioners in the wealth management business. And now, welcome to the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. I am your host, Frank LaRosa, and I am again always joined by my co-host, my lovely co-host, Stacey Frank, Stacey with an E.
Stacey with an E. Welcome. Happy to be back. Happy to be back, as always. Thanks for listening.
Summertime. It's getting a little toasty out there. But
summertime fun time.
It's getting a little toasty in the market with all this PE money coming in. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Oh, there you go.
Like that?
That's a great tee up. Teed it up.
Today we're going to talk about, first of all, thanks for listening. If you are listening to us and not watching us, don't forget we have our YouTube channel, which is same title, Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa, just on YouTube. And you can see our video and you can watch us. Not that we take a ton of notes, but we don't really give a few notes.
Yeah. We can
just
see
general topics. But these conversations are really just that. They're just conversations about what's going on in the industry. Most of the time, we are talking about conversations that we are having as we speak, or yesterday, or the day before. And so these are very timely topics because we feel like they're not talked about enough, or they're not talked about the way they should be talked about.
Misconceptions. Yeah.
You hear a different spin from different things. And so, one of the hot topics that we're always seem to be talking about that constantly being bantered around in the space is PE, right? Is it an opportunity or is it an obstacle? And my answer to that is it depends.
Yeah, it's both.
Right?
It can be both.
Yeah, I was talking to a client yesterday, and we were talking about, what's too big to fail, and not too big to fail like a bank, but, the whole LPLs, supersized firm, and then you have the Osaics and the Ceteras and all these large firms out there. And, I think big is good to a certain degree until big becomes too big. And then, which will be another topic for another podcast, but I think that there'll be a evolution from big to small again. Right now, advisors are concerned about going to smaller firms and then being acquired by the LPLs of the world because they don't want to go to a big firm. So where I'm going with this is a lot of these transactions that we're talking about are all backed by private equity, not the LPL thing. This is not an LPL conversation. But a lot of the transactions that we're seeing today many of them are backed by private equity money. And I think we should just clarify, when we talk about private equity in this conversation, it can mean several different things, right? Because there are traditional private equity firms, but then a lot of the money that's coming into the space is, I'll just call it private funding, right?
Yeah, like family offices,
right? So it's not really funding, private equity, right, to a degree, with pools of people coming in and, KKRs of the world, right? It's private family offices coming in, making investments. And, one of the things that we're going to talk about is why are they doing that?
Yeah. I once had, not that long ago, an RIA client that I'm working with that's exploring this space. And he made a comment to me, and I wasn't 100% sure how to answer it, but maybe you can share this, that some of the smaller family office investors, private equity fund, private funding,
yep,
can be more nimble than some of the larger conglomerate private equity firms. How would you answer that question? Because that literally was asked of me, and I said, let me get back to you. Because there has to be some truth to a smaller, well-funded private firm having more flexibility than maybe, you know, I don't want to call any PE firms out, but like a merchant or some of the others.
Yeah, I think that, you know, the bigger the private equity firm, the more money that they have to put to use, right? So they're typically looking for bigger deals. They also want bigger returns, right? Because they're going to be putting more money in.
More pressure.
So there is more pressure. And you have to be careful when you're looking and talking to private equity. I talked to a private equity firm yesterday that reached out to me about some other things, which we won't talk about on this call, but on this podcast. But a lot of times the smaller firms, the family offices, can be more nimble in that they can, their holding periods can be different. Many of them are okay holding for a lot longer period of time because the family office is typically not looking for the huge hit, quick 4 or 5 year turnaround. What they're looking for is consistency in a return on their investment, right? Which is why this space, the wealth management space, is so intriguing to them because, and I'm going to make a disclaimer here that I understand that the markets don't always go up. I think that many people don't understand that. I've been in the business for almost 30 years, so I've been around enough to know the markets don't always go up, and it's painful when they don't. But private equity firms know that over time, certainly private equity family offices know that over time, the market always goes up, right? Over extended periods of time. And a family office isn't they're not looking to invest for 10 years. A family office is typically generational.
Right, for the long haul.
Right, so if the long haul is multi-generations. So when they're looking at things, they're looking at where can I put money that over a long period of time, I can have predictability in our returns. And yes, they can go into the market, right? But there's some risk there because you take individual stock risk, you take, exactly leadership risk, there's different sector risk and economic risks and all those other things, right? Versus investing in the wealth management space, and you don't necessarily, in a way, it eliminates stock risk, right? Yes, financial services, you can say, well, financial services, creator for whatever reason, but that's not the same as individual stock risk. Buying Citibank, buying Morgan Stanley, name the stock, I don't really care, right? And so private equity firms look at that as it's a risk reward, right? And there is, I'll just say for the little risk that they take, right, the reward is pretty big. One, it's consistent rate of returns. And if they do want to sell at some point in the future, the multiple that they can get on their investment is pretty big.
So what you're saying, whether it's a family office investor situation or a large PE firm, there's no one size fits all. Because I think everybody comes at this conversation with, I'm going to get 18x, multiple on my, 5 million of recurring revenue. Well, that's not always the case. And maybe the smarter decision is going with the more nimble private equity solution.
Well,
maybe,
right.
I don't know.
When we talk about private equity, I say be careful what you wish for. Because there's good private equity and there's bad private equity. And the deal structures that you sign up for may be not what you want, right? How does the private equity firm take their money out? What kind of distributions do they get? Do they get a different multiple on the money that they're taking out before you as the owner of the firm get to take out profits? There's all these things. I know of one firm that was really put under the gun, and the owners lost more equity over time because they didn't hit the hurdles that the private equity firm set out for them. And there was some language in the document that stipulated that if and I don't know, I haven't read the document, so maybe this is a little bit of hearsay, but I've heard this now from people that knew, okay, that by them not hitting the rate of returns and the growth rates that the PE firm was looking for, basically the PE firm got additional equity to make up the difference.
So like
what
a
they were
clawback.
expecting. It was sort of like a clawback, but it was almost like basically the partners of the firm had to give up additional equity to make the private equity firm whole from what they were expecting they should have had by the end of let's call it a 5-year period of time. And so there was a lot of pressure on that group of investor founders because they were not growing at the rate that they wanted to grow at, which is that, so that's why you got to be really careful about what is the deal that you're signing up for and what is the long-term plan of that private equity firm, or just call it private capital, right? What is the plan for that private capital? I know of another firm, as an example, that just got a huge investment. Again, we're not naming names here because, one, there's confidentiality reasons, right? Many of the stuff that we get is confidential, and so we don't want to share all of that information. So we're giving you just the general ideas. Yeah. But we're involved in these conversations almost on a weekly basis. We're having conversations. So one firm that I know that I've spoken to got I'll call it north of a $500 million investment, but it's what's called a 30-year fund. Mm. So the I'll just call it a family office firm took their 30-year money, so their legacy money, meaning that they don't want the money back for 30 years. They're not looking for a rate. They're not looking for the money to get back and flipped 5 years from now, right? So when you take that kind of money from a private equity firm, or again, we're just going to use private equity for conversations because it's getting confusing. Private equity. When you take that kind of money, and as the founder, you now can invest those dollars and build a plan and grow the business with a level of confidence, knowing that some of the things you're going to do are going to take time to come to fruition, mm-hmm. and knowing that you don't have a private equity, sort of big daddy over your shoulder asking you where's my money, makes a huge deal, right? It allows the founders to operate with a level of freedom and not pressure. You always want pressure because we're all competitive people, so you want to do well, but not this pressure like, hey, listen, I need to get a 50% rate of return by the end of 5 years, right? That's pressure. And so, that's sort of the flip side, right? One is, I want a rate of return in 5 years. One is, we're not looking for this money back for 30 years. And that's the difference. And so, but I think that when you look at, again, why private, and by the way, I think we have yet to see the amount of money fully come into the space. I think we've only scratched the surface. The firm I was talking to yesterday, I told them, and they agreed that we're maybe in the third inning of the amount of private equity money, family office money, endowment money. If you look at, if you look at, I said endowments, right? So if you look at alternative investments, mm-hmm. right, and the way endowments and foundations invest money, why wouldn't they come into the space?
Right. I think you're going to see players, agree or disagree, from maybe even different industries, mm-hmm. trying to tap into the advantage of the recurring revenue. Because let's face it, that's really what all these firms are trying to achieve, is to get their hands or their firm, their investment into the benefit of the future recurring revenue of whatever firm they're putting their money into.
Right. It would not surprise me if
that's
you
what they're all
see
after.
Yale Foundation or Harvard or Princeton or some of these huge endowments starting to dip their toe in this water. And you heard it here first, by the way. You heard it here because no one's ever talked about that. Yeah. I think it would not surprise me if that kind of money starts pouring into our space.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which would be awesome. It's great for advisors. The gentleman I was talking to yesterday, he was talking about some decisions he needed to make, and one of them was like, I just I get these calls from these buyers and all that other stuff, and I don't want to do that now, but I hope I'm not making a mistake 10 years from now where my business is worth 50 cents on a dollar. And it was like, you don't have to worry about that. 10 years from now would not surprise me if would not surprise me if the deals are bigger than they are today. And you touched on this, when we talk about deals, be careful. Number one, who you take deal advice from, or when you overhear someone say, well, I got 20 times, or I got
right on what?
20 times versus 9 times or 6 times or 4 times on what number?
Right.
It
What
makes
was
a
the
difference.
analysis? What was the analysis exercise? We'll just call it that.
Yeah.
That the PE firm that you were shopping put you through.
Right.
Because it's all different metrics. Are you a growing firm? Do you have efficient processes? What are your costs? What is your staff like?
Yeah.
Who's staying? Who's going? There's so many of these factors that to just generalize, I got 18x on what and how is really what everybody wants to know.
And I think that's a telling tale also, because if you are considering selling your business and someone's offering you a multiple on your bottom line, on your EBITDA or EBOC, right? Earnings before owner's comp. I would tell you that that's maybe a red flag to a degree, because if they're buying a percentage of your EBITDA, of your bottom line, your net income, they are probably going to want to have some level of control of how you spend your money, versus a firm that maybe only offers you 5x of your top line revenue, right? So your top line revenue, and they just want the cash flow off the business, and they don't care to a degree how you manage your expenses, your local expenses, your LLC expenses, right? So don't get enamored by the 15 or 20x on EBITDA versus only 5 on top line revenue, because the 5 might be better. Because if the firm is not going to manage, like so for me, for instance, right, as the founder of the company, the benefit of entrepreneurs and the benefit of being a business owner is you get some flexibility with your P&L, right, and how you operate your P&L and expenses that flow through your P&L as the business owner. When you sell part of your business to a private equity firm that is now going to own part of your net income, those things change. You are just not going to be allowed to do the things that you want to do as a business owner that you were able to do before. So be very careful about that.
So here's a question, because this comes at us, this conversation, when we're exploring the RIA or the hybrid RIA space with advisors. We work with a number of them, where in lieu of transition comp, the firms, really the RIAs, are taking a minority stake. There's a number of large enterprise RIAs that are maybe masking transition comp as really taking a stake in the business.
Yeah.
And is that a smart decision? Some advisors will say, I need the transition comp. Some will say, I'm not ready to do that because I'm still growing. I don't want other roommates in my business.
Yeah.
So what's your thought on
So
that?
I would tell
This is
you-
huge.
Yeah. So I would tell you that, again, it depends.
So there's no definitive answer?
No, because it's interesting. I'm working with two clients right now, and they're not partners, but they're going to merge their businesses together, but still remain as separate practices, right? And one is older and one is younger, both successful businesses, and that answer is different from both of them, right? Because you're right. If you are going to sell part of your business to join the firm to join this firm, right? You're going to sell initially, let's just call it 20% of your practice.
Well, you're allowing them to take a minority stake.
Well, you're
That's
selling.
how it's explained.
But you're selling.
Well, which
20%,
is- yeah.
You're selling 20% of your practice. So let's just say, for argument's sake, you're $1 million producer, and they're buying 20% of your cash flow. So they're buying 20% of the $1 million, right? For simple math purposes.
Yeah.
So they're buying $200,000, and they're going to give you a 5x. So they're giving you $1 million. Okay. They're giving you $1 million in exchange for 20% of your business. Okay. Now, if you just simple math, like you would have made that $1 million up in 5 years, right? Because if you just held on and you made an extra $200,000 over 5 years, it's $1 million, right? So what are you going to get? What are you getting in return for the $1 million?
That's
Right.
That's what we're trying to solve.
Right. So
that's where we get stuck sometimes.
So what are you going to get in return for the $1 million? These are the things that you need to uncover. You are going to get probably some level of equity. So because you're probably not going to get 100% cash. Most of the times it's 75% cash, 25% in stock in the new company, in the holding company, right? the holding company or the actual the company, the RIA, right? So you're going to get that. But then it's going to come down to what other resources is the firm going to bring you to help you grow faster than you could grow on your own, right? So if you took the $200,000 and said, okay, I'm going to reinvest that $200,000 into my business, what rate of growth would you have, right? You'd have to have a better leader. You'd have to hire leadership people. You'd have to do marketing stuff. You'd have to better technology. There's things that you would need to do in order to grow your business. If your average growth rate is 5%, let's just say, and you want to grow it at 10 or 15%, well, how do you do that? And so the pitch from a PE firm is, well, we're going to bring you the resources that we already have. We already have a marketing team. We already have technology people. We already have leadership people that will help you as a business owner solve problems faster than you might be able to solve them on your own because you've never been in that situation before, right?
Yep.
Like for me, the conversation I was having with somebody yesterday, someone wanted to, knock on the door and want to do this with us, right? And, part of their pitch is, well, you've never built, let's just call it $50 million business, right? Our goal is over 100, but we're not at $50 million yet. And when we get to a $50 million top line revenue, there will be problems and things that come up when you run a $50 million business that you didn't have when you were running a $20 or $25 million business, right? That I have not experienced yet. And so his point was, we have, right? So we will help you learn faster and maybe avoid those pitfalls and avoid the mistakes that you'll make along the way. So your growth rate will be much faster because you will be able to operate faster, which I totally understand, right?
Right. They're helping you build out the processes and efficiencies ahead of time with the assumption that you're going to get to that number. And if you don't have those in place early on, then
right, because they know that, like, okay, so when you get to this place, here are the problems that you're going to have.
Right.
So let's address them beforehand.
Right.
Versus, and this is for an advisor. The whole point is, if you want to go to a firm and they're going to take your $1 million and they're going to help you, double or triple or quadruple your $1 million of revenue in twice the speed as you might. So even though you now only own 80% of your business, right? Because they are 80% of the cash flow. If you can triple your business, you can go from $1 million to $3 million, and you own 80% of it, right? So you're still making $2.4 million, and you did it faster. So maybe it might have taken you 5 or 6 or 7 years to go from $1 million to $3 million. But with the right partner, the right PE partner, private equity partner, you can go from $1 million to $3 million in 4 years.
Right. And they're helping you build those systems along the way because they're using that firm as a growth engine.
Right.
They need you to grow.
Right.
Or it's a bad investment.
Right.
Maybe.
So the conversation I was having with this one client of mine that's going down this road for the right reasons, and I think we found the right solution, because when he's looking at payouts and stuff like that, right? I'm like, you can't look at payouts. You have to look at your actual earnings, right? And okay, maybe you're at a little bit less of a payout. You've gotten money. You put money in the bank, right? A couple $1 million in the bank. So what are you going to earn? What can you earn on that if you invest it wisely and conservatively? But you have to look at, what is your net income going to look like 3 years from now working with that team versus you doing it on your own, right? Because doing it on your own, you're growing at a nice little pace, not lighting the world on fire, right? But now if you surround yourself with all of these people that know how to grow a wealth management business, you'll grow much faster and you'll end up making more money in a shorter period of time. And that's the pitch, right? That's what we hear. That's what I'm hearing. That's what everybody hears. What you have to figure out is how to sift through what's real and what's Memorex for those of us that are a little bit older, right? Remember beta VHS tapes,
yeah.
Right? And I think there are some firms out there that truly do deliver on those added value things, right? And I think the others that are smoke and mirrors.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think as a business owner or an RIA, when you're considering private equity at all, which structure of private equity should you take, you still need to take a step backward and say, what are your actual long-term goals? What are you trying to achieve? Is it a growing practice? Is it a lifestyle practice? Is it leaving multi-generational wealth? Because I think those 3 areas, and there's probably others, should really help you come to your own realization of what's the right path for you. And don't let anybody pigeonhole you into, just the big multiple. There's so many other things, and be true to who you are as a business owner and what you've always been trying to achieve. Don't be blinded by the 15, 18x multiple.
Don't get enamored by the check, because if you do the math, a lot of time, I mean, what they're really doing, and forget about the growth, right? What they're all they're really doing is paying you with your own money.
That sounds like an oxymoron.
Right? But they are. They're just paying you with your own money. So in my example, $1 million producer selling 20%, which happens all the time, is getting $1 million, 5x, 4 or 5x, whatever the number is, right? All they're doing is paying you back with your own money for the first 5 years.
Right. And some advisors or RAs will say, but I'm growing faster than that. And why should I give up the speed of my growth to somebody else?
You shouldn't.
Say that again.
My answer is you shouldn't.
There you go.
I think if you are growing at a fast pace, you don't need to do that, and you shouldn't need to do that. And if you just want capital, candidly, if you just want capital, just move firms.
Right.
I'm saying just move firms. Take a traditional, traditional transition package, right? Most of these firms are paying deals like we've never seen before. I was having a conversation with a guy yesterday about that. Some of the deals that independent advisors are getting are close to what retail firms were offering 5 years ago. I mean, it's amazing, right? And so, it's a forgivable note, big deal. If you talk to really wealthy people that have grown businesses over many years, right? I actually had a conversation with Kevin O'Leary. If those of you who know who Kevin O'Leary is, he was at one of I'm part of this art.
Mr. Wonderful?
Yeah, Mr. Wonderful. I was at one of my RT Syndicate events. This was years ago, and there's a small number of people there, so it was a really intimate conversation. So we get to ask, you have to sign pages of NDAs and all this other stuff, right? So things I can't talk about. But I got to ask him a specific question. We had a conversation at a cocktail thing, and I asked him the question about private equity versus debt. If you're trying to grow your business, and you need capital because you want to grow faster than the cash flow of your business can offer, right? Is private equity the way to go, or is debt the way to go? And his answer was debt. If your company can handle the debt service.
Can outpace.
No, can handle the debt service.
Oh,
so
gotcha.
If you borrow money, the interest and the payments, right? So if your business can afford to pay the debt service, so let's just say it's, I'm just making up a number, 10%, right? 7 to 10%. So if you borrow $1 million and you're paying 10% of that $1 million, so you're gonna pay back $1.1 million, maybe a little more with compound interest, all that other stuff, whatever. I'm not a mathematician. But if your business can pay that debt back, that is way cheaper debt. Even if you pay 10 or 12%, right? It's way cheaper than the private equity debt, because he said private equity money is the most expensive way to do it. And he told me the story about his first deal. It was like a $50 million loan that he went to buy this company. And after he signed the thing, he went back to the hotel, threw up. Because it was that was like the biggest loan he'd ever taken before. And but he said if your business can handle the debt service and you're trying to grow, always go with debt.
That's really interesting. So then on the flip side,
I know my private equity buddies probably don't want to hear that, but that's the truth.
Right. So my question on the flip side is, when an advisor, an RIA comes to you, what's the right profile where you say you are the perfect private equity candidate? Who is that?
Yeah, I think somebody.
Who is that for?
I think that someone that's potentially a little bit older, I think that's somebody that meaning that they don't have as long a window of time to invest their own capital at the small rate of growth that they have, given the time frame that they have left in the business, right? So someone in their late 50s, early 60s, mid 60s, right? That maybe has 10 or 12 years, 15 years tops, right? But if they're only growing at a 4 or 5 or 6% rate of return, right? In order for them to really hit it big, they need to double or triple that rate of return, and they might not have the manpower or the cash flow to be able to go out and hire the people that they need to hire to get the growth that they need, right? The other one. So the other thing is there are some deals out there that I think are really good. One in particular that I really do like is, and again, not going to use the name of the firm, but it's a deal that I really do like. And if I was an advisor practice, I would strongly consider doing a deal like this. Again, with the caveat that you have to remember that when you sign on a dotted line with a private equity firm, there's no exit. Like, you can't say, never mind, I changed my mind. Like with a transition deal. Or if you move to LPL, or you move to, doesn't matter what firm, or Osaic, or whatever, doesn't matter what firm.
Yeah,
you move to a firm, you get a deal, you have a 10-year transition deal, right? You have a contract for 10 years. If you decide you don't like the firm, you can just leave.
Oh, you have to have the
Right.
note paid off.
But the new firm will pay
theoretically.
off the note, right? So it's easier to do, right? You
Right.
can just move, right? But when you sign a deal and you sell a minority share of your business to a private equity firm, they're not going to just let you walk away.
Yeah, there's no backsies.
Right. There's no backsies, right? Yeah, there's no backsies, right? Now you can maybe try to work some things into the contract that allow that, but they're typically they're going to want to get paid back.
Like an exit
And
clause.
what exit clause? They're going to want a return on their money. So if it's 5 years in and they paid you 5x, they might want 8x, right? So it might actually cost you money to get out, especially if they can say, well, we helped you go from $1 million to $3 million, so we want a profit on that, right? I'm not saying that you can't do that, but what I'm saying is you have to be really careful.
I think we're just trying to pose all the different scenarios.
Yeah, but let me just finish my the deal that I like right now is a deal where they're buying some of your top line revenue, right? They're giving you a decent multiple for between, let's just say, for argument's sake, it's four times. It's 75% cash, 25% in holding company stock, which I believe is going to go public, right? I firmly believe that, and I think it's going to be a home run. And then when the transaction happens, so you get stock, 20%, let's just say, so on $1 million practice, you sold 20%, so you sold $200,000. When the transaction happens, you have what's called a drag along, meaning that you have to now sell an additional 20% to the firm. Okay, so on the $1 million, let's say it happens 3 years from now, and you're at $2 million. So now you're going to sell an additional 20% at $2 million. So you're going to sell $400,000 of revenue, but you're going to probably get, excuse me, you're probably going to get what the firm is expecting, which I think that they'll get, is somewhere between 18 and 20 times. So you're going to get 20 times on $400,000. That's real money. Okay. So now you've now sold 40% of your business. The first tranche was at 4x. The second tranche was at 20x. You can then raise your hand and opt into what's called a tag along. That says, hey, I want to tag along. I want to sell an additional 20% at 20x.
So now you're up to 60%.
So now you've sold 60% of your business, which now is worth it's a $2 million business, right? But you sold 40% of it at 20x, and you've sold 20% of it at 4x. So do the math; it's probably somewhere around 18x, right? But you still own 40% of your business. So 40% of $2 million is $800,000. Well, when you went into the deal, you were only doing $1 million. So you're at 800 and you have millions of dollars in the bank, right? And you can
I mean, that's compelling.
and then you can still grow the $800,000 back to your original. So you're basically playing with house money at that point, right? If you think about that way, you're playing with house money, but you have equity in what I think will be an amazing stock to own. I've seen companies, like there's some people, we all know that there's a couple of firms that went public and then they ended up going back private because it was a bad structure, right? I don't see this happening that way in this particular deal. I see this deal as an amazing opportunity because of the leadership team that they have running this thing. They know what they're doing. I'm not gonna use names because, what I described is sort of not confidential, but it's I don't want to use names, but I believe firmly that this is gonna be special. And the reason why I think it's really good is because you're getting high. You have the opportunity to partner with some people that have been doing this for a long time and know their shit, and have the team around them to grow your business. But number one, number two, they're not buying into the bottom line of your company, so you can still run your business however you want to run your business as an owner.
You're not giving away your clients.
You're not giving away your clients. They're not even buying your business. They're just buying cash flow. Right, so they're not buying the business. Now, they have a scenario where if you want, they'll just buy your whole business, right? Then they'll pay you to manage it over time. I don't really like that. I don't really like that scenario. But what I like is, because I would be betting on myself as an advisor, right? That I can then regrow the remaining 40% back to what I had originally, and maybe I can take some of the money that I got and use that to reinvest back in my business, to do more marketing, to do more branding, to hire more people, and then grow that 800,000 back to 2 million before they do another transaction. Because they'll do a secondary offering or a third offering. To me, that's legacy money. That's like building, as an advisor, how do you build legacy wealth? Doing deals like that.
Yeah. So what's even the downside? Because it seems completely opportunistic.
The downside is you are selling your revenue.
You're selling your business.
You're selling
your revenue.
You're selling your revenue to this group of people, and you got to hope that they deliver.
Mm-hmm. But I think our confidence level is.
My confidence level with this particular group is extremely high. So much so, and it is what it is. So much so that I've told them that any fee that I get from my clients, I actually would put into the deal. Meaning, basically, like, don't pay me. Put whatever you owe me into the deal.
That's a bold statement.
Right. So I'm literally putting my money where my mouth is, because I believe in it so much. And you know me. I can smell bullshit a mile away. I can smell deals that are smoke and mirrors, that are hope and a dream, right? These firms talk about, we're going to go public one day. No, you're not. I've been doing this a long time.
Or ones that aren't transparent.
I have enough information and have seen enough, which is, again, why I can't say certain things, to know it's as legitimate a deal as I've seen any firm offer. And I'm super excited. I have some clients that are going to go there, and I'm excited for them because this is the legacy wealth that they've been looking for years. And what it's going to do for them and their families is going to be great. And by the way, they're not selling their business. They're not getting out of the business, right? They're not becoming an employee of some firm, because there are other firms that are offerable. We'll buy your business, we'll buy the whole business, and we'll give you a 5 or 6 or 7x, right? Which sounds great, and then they're going to pay you a base salary, but they're going to give you a 6 or 7x because they know they're going to sell it for 20, right? And now you're an employee, and I don't know, most W-2 advisors, most independent advisors that I know, that came from the W-2 space don't want to go back to being a W-2 employee again.
Yeah.
Like I could never go back to being an employee.
I just wonder why. I mean, the structure sounds amazing, huge opportunity. Like, why aren't other firms doing it this way? Maybe that's a rhetorical question.
I would tell you that I think it has to do with the leadership at the firm. I think it has to do with the amount of money that the leadership team has personally poured into this business. Personally. Like I'm not going to disclose any of that information, but I know that these people have put in, I'll just say, millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and maybe 40 or 50 millions of those comments they've put in personally. And they know that they don't need the money right now, and they have a game plan. These people operate at a higher level than the average firms that I see in the space. And I'm not saying this is coming across the wrong way, maybe. I'm not saying that there aren't other deals that are good deals, right? There are some firms out there that we know that will buy a percentage of your practice. They'll give you a decent multiple. You'll get stock in the company, and you'll get a dividend, and you'll get some growth, and the stock hopefully will be worth more and more and more and more. I know, as an example, just as an example, because I've been working with them, I've known them for a long time. Like Stewart Partners as an example, when they first launched their business, I think they recently just celebrated their 10 years, right? So 10 years, they've done a tremendous. Jim Gold is a friend of mine. Everybody, Hyde, everybody, Jeff Gagnon, they're all good friends of mine. We've known each other for a long time. So I'm so super proud of what they built there, right? And their stock, you go over, they give you a transition deal, you get stock, and the stock has gone up in value, over the years, right? And so advisors that are there have done really well.
Yeah.
So there are opportunities to do that. My point is really just be wary of, there are a lot of firms that are coming in and just waving checks, and they don't have a real game plan other than we're going to aggregate and we're going to bring everybody in, and we're going to collect an override, and we're going to help service you, and we have our fingers crossed, and then we're going to sell the firm one day for 20x. That's a hope and a dream, right? I think that there's a difference between like legitimate players and people that are going to fake it till they make it.
Yeah, so know the landscape.
Know the landscape.
And that's why working with someone like Frank, myself, our team, to help you, get the facts straight.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. Again, do yourself a favor, and if you're getting calls from these firms, be really mindful about where you're getting your information from, because that's why I'm totally transparent about what I do with my clients. And my clients know that, hey, if you go to this firm, what they're going to pay me for doing my job, which is what we get paid, I'm going to be right next to you. I'm going to be sitting right next to you and hoping this deal works, because I'm putting all my money into the deal with you. So I want this thing to work.
We have to get it right.
Right.
Gotta get it right.
Putting my money where my mouth is the best thing I can do. So anyway, I think that this topic, there's so many other topics, so many other things to go over, which we will talk on another podcast on, in terms of like, what does the exit look like? What happens when a PE firm exits? What happens when, an owner of a PE firm swaps deck chairs, not on a sinking ship, but they swap deck chairs with another PE firm. How does that affect the advisor? There are things that we can talk about. We'll do that on the next episode, because it's sort of a different topic. But I hope this conversation was enlightening. I hope it was educational, maybe a little bit frightening.
Well, just
maybe a little scared straight.
Yeah, just make sure you do the right due diligence with the right firms, with the right partner. Again, hate to say it, like us, that's completely unbiased and puts advisors' needs first.
But I'll tell you this, but it is biased because there are a lot of firms in our space, right, doing what we do. There are very few of them that have the experience that we have, or I have, right, and you, but I'll just say me in particular. There are a couple that are, that I give a lot of credit to that have been in the business. They were advisors. They were in this space. They are seasoned financial service professionals. But then there's a whole slew of them that have very little experience, and those are the ones you have to be careful of. Those are just salespeople. They're just trying to sell you on something, and they're hoping that you say yes to one of them. They don't really know why, and they're not really giving you advice. They're just selling you on something. What we do here is we give you advice whether you want to hear it or not.
Good, the bad.
The good and the bad. As we say, we call it balls and strikes. Because in order for you to make a decision, which is a life-changing decision, especially in this space, it can be life-altering, good or bad, right? Because, again, it's really hard to unwind these deals, right? If you don't go into them with your eyes wide open. And so we take that very seriously, and it's our job to tell you all of these things so that you can make an educated decision on what's right for you and your situation. Because there are solutions to all of those things. And so you just have to be open and honest with us, and we'll help you solve those problems. But be really mindful about the people that you're working with, and I would ask them what their history has been in financial services. How long have they been in this space, right? What do they do in this space? What is their experience? Because your wealth management practice, aside from your family, is probably the most important thing in your life because it funds your family.
Yeah.
It funds everything you do in your life. And so be really, really careful about it. And work with a firm that understands how important that is, right? And so that's us. I think that we're really proud of what we do here. We're passionate about what we do. Sometimes overly passionate, but we're very proud of what we do. We want to protect everybody. We want to make sure that every single advisor has the right information so they can make an educated decision. There's lots of opportunities out there, so much that you can get totally confused and blinded. And then sometimes, because of that, don't make any decision, which also is not a good thing to do.
Paralysis by analysis,
paralysis
really.
by analysis, right. And so having a mentor, a guide, or coach, right, an agent that can walk you through all this stuff to get you to the point that you want to get to is super, super important. So one of the best in the business is this young lady.
We make
right
a good
here.
team.
Yeah. So if you want to talk to somebody that really does care about your practice, give Stacey a call. What's your number, Stacey?
856-816-6322 or Stacey at eliteconsultingpartners.com. Don't forget the E. Or Frank.
You give me a call at 856-316-4651. You can shoot me an email at frank@eliteconsultingpartners.com. You can always also DM me on LinkedIn, or you can DM me on my Instagram account, which is franklarosa.elite. And I look forward to talking with you and maybe helping guide you in the right direction. So thanks a lot. Hope you enjoy the show.
See you soon.
Thanks for listening to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. If you're looking for more advice or solutions on any topics relating to the financial services industry, or just want to subscribe to our podcast, head on over to eliteconsultingpartners.com/podcast.